everybody. Hey, this is Elanda with Empowering Life After Loss, and I have asked my close friend to interview her today. So this is the month of February, and my channel is about grief, but I also wanted to do something about grief and love and the loss of a loved one or the love of your life. I met Tina probably in about 2015. She is a nurse and a nurse practitioner by trade. She also has several businesses, which we will go over all of those later. And I wanted to interview Tina because I feel like she would be transparent, honest, and give me some really good feedback to help my audience. What I have done in my research is I realized that losing a husband, which she lost her husband through divorce, is very similar as losing a husband through death. So studies show that you still go through the stages of grief with a divorce just like you do with a death. So if you've lost a loved one or you are feeling some type of way this year because of Valentine's Day, and I don't know if Tina is, she might be totally fine. But if she is, I want her to help my audience in getting to that stage of their grief. So with that all being said, this is Miss Tina Jaliba.
Hello.
And hi.
Hi, girl. I'm glad to be here. How is everyone?
So the first thing I'm going to ask her is, how long were you married?
Oh, to be honest with you, I think I buried some things in the marriage. I'm like, how long? Was it 7? Was it 8? Have you been divorced 6, 7, 8? Like, literally, I didn't shut down a lot of the numbers in my mind. But it was around 8 because I remember it was past the 7-year itch.
Okay.
It was like right at, if not a little over that 7-year itch that people talk about.
So tell me how you met your husband. How did you meet him, and what made you know that he was the one?
Well, I actually met him through his mom.
Okay.
His mom introduced us, and I met her in the hospital, like working as a nurse. And so she introduced us. We actually kind of struck up a friendship or an acquaintance. And so she used to invite me over to the house. And one time he happened to be there, and then another time he had come up to the job for, brought food and stuff like that. And so she's like, "That's my friend," and we just struck up conversation, and it was on after that.
How long did you date him before y'all got married?
Oh gosh, probably 6 months.
Okay.
It was a very short courtship, very short.
What made you know that he was your husband?
At the time, prior to him, I'd had some failed relationships. And at the time, he was the best that I had seen up to date, right? And so some of my prior relationships were kind of thug passion, kind of like, trap house out here in these streets. But he was fairly clean cut and, lived a good life and was a hard worker and was really good to me. I mean, he'd never had like a ticket, just he didn't smoke, he didn't drink. And I was in a transitional place of my life where I didn't want that street life anymore. And I was trying to really settle down with my family and just really kind of grow. And I was like going back to school at the time. So I was looking for that picture perfect family. And so he fit the mold at the time. And he just was very friendly, very, very, very good to me, just a good person overall. And so I fell in love rather quickly with who he was as a man, who he was as a friend, as a person. And it was something that up to that point in my life, I had not experienced in prior relationships. Not that I didn't have good relationships or men that treated me good, because I did, but this was different. This was like really different than anything I had experienced before. So I didn't want to let that go. I was like, yeah, she in this thing. She in this thing.
I got a question for you. You said you fell in love quickly.
Yeah.
Were you in love or were you in lust?
I was in lust for sure. I was in lust for sure, because at the time I thought it was love because I didn't really know what love truly was. I thought I did, but I really didn't. At the time, I didn't really love myself. Let's keep it real. Like, I thought I did. because I had learned to love some of what I did, like some of my accomplishments, some those things about me that other people love. People love my vibrant personality. People loved being around me. People loved my accomplishments and things like, I was that kind of, ambitious and driven, and so a lot of people like to be around me because of these personality characteristics. But behind closed doors, there was a lot of insecurity. There was a lot of things that I was going through at the time, and this relationship kind of masked how I was feeling on the inside, right? Because I felt like it added value to my life, because I didn't really see the value in myself. That's the honest to goodness truth. But it took me years later to kind of look back. What they say, hindsight sometimes is 20/20. To kind of look back as to, why did I do this? Why did I really enter into this relationship? And it took a lot of therapy, a lot of praying, a lot of healing to even be honest with myself. Was, why did I get to this space? Right?
So why did you enter into it?
Because at the time I had two children. I mean, being honest, I had two kids, and not that I was looking for a father for them, because I was so independent. I was the INDEPE, whatever, what little boosie or whatever. Do you know about me? So I took a lot of pride in being able to take care of myself financially. At the time, I had built me a house from the ground up. I was doing very well, right, taking care of my kids. So I didn't need a baby daddy. I didn't need a father in my life, but I was lonely. I was missing that partnership, right? That companionship, right? Because it really wasn't, to some degree, but I was missing some of that. And so that's why I actually just jumped out on the limb, like, you know what, this is good. This man loved me. He loved my kids, at least what we thought was love. And it was really lust, right? Because right out the gate, we was all,
Well, you know what? I asked
compatible in that area.
I asked you if you were in love or lust, because I feel like so many people get into relationships, and the first 6 months to a year, everything is perfect. But that's not realistic. So after you get past that year or so, you start getting into the reality of it. And I just kind of want to tell what Tina said too, because, so many people say, well, God sent my husband. But then when it's divorce, I'm like, well, did God tell you to divorce him? So I'm not, not trying to be funny, but I kind of wanted to know, did you feel like he was sent to you? Were you really in love with him? Because a lot of times after that first year or so, things start to get real. You start seeing a person for who they really are. It's not perfect anymore. So the thing is, can you stay with them after that? As my daughter and son called the cupcake phase.
Yeah.
So once all the greatness is over, where does it go from there? So with all of that being said, what started to happen? Did you notice anything in your marriage that made you think it was an issue?
Well, no, I think, we've had some conversation about it before. I don't think I had the typical situation in my marriage, because it was not perfect, but we were really good. Like, we were good. He was kind of, he was a bit passive, right? But not hard to get along with at all, right? I was kind of dominating, and I led more than he should be leading. And so it did cause somewhat of, that kind of traded role, kind of, sometimes it was a conflict, right? When I was trying to be submissive, when I was trying to allow him to make decisions and lead, and he was used to me making decisions and leading. And so sometimes it caused a conflict, but our conflicts were actually very minor, because he was a get along kind of guy. So it was like, if this ain't working, we ain't got to fight about it. We ain't got to argue about it. Let's just do what we got to do to make it work. But I believe that over the years, as he became and grew into himself, he suppressed a lot of what he wanted, right? And so because he wasn't really honest with himself to say, you know what, this is not okay. No, I really do want to do this or go here, but I don't want to just kind of pass things over. For me, the relationship wasn't a God-sent relationship. That's that's the truth. At the time, it appeared to be that because he was good, but he was not God at the end of the day. And a lot of people, sometimes the enemy also sends you satanic agents and counterfeits, and he knows what you're struggling with. He watches you. He knows what you're going through in your life. So he knows what you're going to be attracted to. He knows the traps to set for you when you're in a place, if you're lonely or you're looking to fill a void. He knows exactly what to present in front of you to make you look like, oh, this is good. This is as good as it's going to get. And so those are the kind of ideals I had at the time. It was like, this is the best I've ever had, and it doesn't get any better than this at the time. And it was because of really the true issue was how I felt about myself. Had I saw my value back then, I probably would not have settled, right, for what I thought was good, because there really was better. I know that today, looking back at who he is now, and he's not changed much, right? And I'm looking at him and I was like, was that what I thought was the best? Because since the divorce, I've seen a lot of valuable men, and I thought to myself, I thought that was as good as it got. And I was mistaken. Does that mean that he's bad? No, right? But at the time, it was the best thing that I had experienced at the time. So I was like, you know what? I need to get it while the getting is good. I need to go on and snatch this thing up for somebody else snatch it up. Because if I don't, somebody else will. And you know, that whole thing, like I'm this age, you know, I'm tired of being alone. And so let me just settle for what looks like it's good. But for that particular situation, not that it was bad, because it actually brought me a lot of good things. My son, right? My ex-husband and I have a beautiful son that I would never trade for the world. And so there's a lot of lessons that were learned in that time. Sis was not abused, right? I wasn't getting drugged by my hair and cussed out and drugged down the road. Was none of that happening in my relationship. So we had a very, very good or I won't say good. It wasn't perfect, but we had a decent marriage.
Why do you think the marriage ended in divorce with all those great things? What made the marriage come to an end?
It was multifactorial, right? And so for in layman's terms, it was more than one thing. There were spiritual ramifications for the demise of the marriage, because I truly do believe that was not my God intended partner and spouse. And so I entered into the marriage, but I wasn't in a full alignment with my purpose or even who I really was at that time, to even know if he was somebody that I could join with in eternity forever in my future. So as he grew and as we both grew, we actually realized, and I think maybe after the divorce, or maybe he realized before me, I don't know, that he just was not wanting to remain in the marriage, because over time we were really different people. We had different, I know that very clearly now in conversations with him, with what I've done since him, the acceleration and all of the things that's happened in my life since I detached from the marriage, that had I been with him, I would have never been able to continue to do, right? It would have been a hindrance to my life. And so I do not think that it was God ordained. I do believe that God has a permissive will, right? And he honors the covenant of marriage. And that's just how it goes. And we have free will, right? So I chose him. He chose me. He honored the covenant of marriage, but it really was not God ordained. And so it allowed for him and myself to not always come into agreement spiritually. Even though we did not talk about it, we could tell that we were unequally yoked over time, because I was still very much driven, very much ambitious. He was very much passive, very laid back. And so over time, it's like, let's do this, let's do that, blah, 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 right? And he was like, yeah, no, right?
So do you think he lost interest?
I do believe he did. I do, and I could save some of the spiritual stuff for another conversation. But there was a lot of things, I think, mentally, spiritually, that was kind of going on that caused some detachment. Not to mention he is in the military. And so there were other natural things going on in our life that caused some of the disconnect. Within the first 3 years of our marriage, he deployed twice. And the first time he was gone for 15 months, the second time for 12 months. We had a new baby right in this time. And I'm telling him that I feel yet alone but married. And I would say, I'm a woman that's married but single, right? And I felt like I was still positioned in where I was before as a single mom, but with a ring on my finger and a contract, right? Because he was not there physically. And then when he was there physically, he was very much detached, because I believe of some of his experiences overseas and those deployments. And it was hard for him to reacclimate. It was hard for him to reacclimate. So I was used to being the head honcho in the house, right? We moving, we shaking. What you doing? You doing your homework, rocking a baby, put baby on the hip, cooking dinner. And he's sitting there looking at me like, what we finna do, right? Because he's lived a single life for 15 months or 12 months, quote unquote.
So do you think he had girlfriends when he was
Now that I don't honestly believe that. But would I put it past him? Nah.
So did you have a boyfriend?
I did not. Okay. I did not.
So why did the marriage end? Because what you described is I feel like is in a lot of marriages.
Yeah, it is.
Married but being lonely. Having a partner that you don't feel like is there for you all the time. A lot of what you describe is in a lot of marriages. Women are just not real about what's in their marriage, but a lot of that goes on in a lot of marriages. And what happens is you grow apart.
Mm-hmm. And well, I'm going to tell you why. I think some people marry for the wrong reasons, or we don't really know why we marry. Mm-hmm. He was actually a little younger than me. Not that age necessarily makes a difference, because I know some old fools and I know some people that are young that are very wise and mature beyond their years. However, at the time, when you don't really know who you are, your identity, what you want out of a person, out of yourself, out of your life, and you link up with a person, sometimes you either lose yourself or you're so busy trying to figure out who you are that as you're exploring these areas, you're finding that maybe I'm not really as connected to this person as I thought I was or wanted to be. And so some people enter into marriage for the wrong reasons. And so not that he needed me for security, but whatever it was that I was giving him in that time that he chose to ask my hand in marriage, I think when that no longer served him, he didn't really understand what the act and the work of marriage really is. Most people don't, right?
So he decided to end it.
He decided to end it. He decided to end it. He did. To this day, I have his explanation and interpretation of why. Of course, there was infidelity, right, which came up. Right. And it was sudden, right, because we didn't have any history. There was no history of infidelity we didn't have financial issues or distresses, anything like that. We didn't have really familial household issues. Literally, it was like flip-flop. And so what happened is I believe he opened up the door to a relationship that he emotionally became, and I'm more than that too, right? I'm very, very strongly also physical. Mm-hmm. And once he did that, I think it was hard for him to come back. Guilt or whatever. Now there's so many. So you're saying he
opened up a relationship physically and emotionally.
Oh,
so
for sure.
Okay.
Oh, for sure.
With that being with her saying that, that's where I think this ties with grief, because with divorce comes the stages of grief, because you go through the denial, the pain, because some of it, correct me if I'm wrong, mm-hmm. some of it I don't even think you realize that there was a problem, mm-hmm. even though it wasn't the perfect marriage.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
When I talked to her, it wasn't the perfect marriage, but it wasn't a marriage that she felt as though was about to end. So to me, it's like the fact that he ended up wanting a divorce was shocking, almost.
Shocking. The whole rug pulled underneath me. Yeah.
Which is some of that denial, pain, fear that you go through when you actually lose your husband. Another thing is anger. Did you feel anger when he told you?
Oh, of course I did.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Bargaining. Where did you go through the bargaining stage?
Meaning
Like with death, you feel like if I had done this,
maybe
my person would still be here.
I did
maybe
that.
If I had not given Ebony her car, she wouldn't have had a car accident. Maybe if I would have taken my husband to the hospital earlier, he wouldn't have died. So that's a bargaining with death. But I think you also bargained with a divorce.
I did.
What did you think you could have done different to maintain your marriage?
Honestly, there was a lot that I could have done. I didn't know how to do, right? It would have been nice if I had some leading or guiding or some healthy marriages to mimic and mirror, or some counsel, some wise counsel, some people that were around that had successful marriages. So I was just kind of thugging it out like everybody else, right? Just trying to figure things out the best way you can. And so I think if I had a source, like a credible source, somebody that I could have gone to for some ways in how to lead my home as a woman, like how to support my husband in submission, how to lead without castrating him, how to support his decision making, without making it like, you don't know what you're talking about, I know what I'm talking about, I've been doing this longer than you, just follow my lead. So it was like, nah, we ain't listening to you because you ain't never got no ideas, and when you think you got one, it ain't a good one, right? And so a lot of that I think did not contribute to what he needed in the marriage, right? And so it was very much self-absorbed. Mm-hmm. It was very much because I was used to carrying that dominant role pre-marriage. Mm-hmm. And I took that into the marriage, right? Mm-hmm. If I don't do it, it ain't gonna get done, right? Instead of saying, well, let me see what he finna do. Let me really see, or let me talk to him about this, or let me use some different verbiage or whatever. And so it was just not very comforting, I think, to him most times, where he wanted me to be and I didn't know he needed me to be. Right. And a lot of other things that he just did not, because he a man, like, I got this, I'm good, my feelings ain't hurt. But it was a lot of times his feelings was hurt, right? And a lot of things that he just never brought them up, just never talked to me about them. So I just was going on like, yeah, life is good, we good, you good? He like, yeah. I'm like, okay.
When he really wasn't.
When he really wasn't, right?
And with that, I'm gonna add that I think I respect what she says, but I think too, as a married woman, and I've been married for almost 28 years, I think a lot of people are not real about their relationship. Mm-hmm. So she was looking for somebody to be honest, but so many married people are acting like they have perfection that when you go through what Tina and her husband was going through, they feel like they have a bad marriage because, you see other people where it looks like everything is great and really it's not. No relationship is great. So even though she did some bargaining, me personally, I feel like no matter what counseling you have, what advice you have, two people have to want it and choose to stay.
That's correct.
So with that being said, even if she had a good advisor, if one person has checked out, it's going to be difficult to maintain a relationship. Yeah. So a lot of times, at least somebody got to be fighting for it. Somebody got to be fighting, and the other one got to be willing to fight.
That's right.
Also, I do believe I'm going to go back to, because this is my grief channel, with death. Sometimes we feel like what we could have, should have, would have done. God knows your day of death and he knows your day of birth. So sometimes no matter what we feel like we could have done differently, it's nothing you could have done differently. Because sometimes when it's, as she say, the demise of things, you can't reverse it and you can't change it. That's even though you would like for it to be done another way. The other thing I know with death, you feel guilty. Mm-hmm. Explain your guilt. What did you have any guilt for getting your divorce after you got your divorce?
I'm not quite sure if I could say that it was guilt that I felt. Mm-hmm. Probably more condemnation, probably more yet again another failed relationship. It was kind of like, what did I do this time, right? How come I can't seem to maintain healthy relationships and keep them? And so I find out later that it was some spiritual, hindrances. But outside of that, it was a lot of that, like, what, it must be me, it's me, what did I do wrong? So I don't know what the word is for that, but not so much um what did you say, like
Guilt. Well, guilt with the
I don't have too
comparison,
much
I
guilt.
think too with guilt is sometimes you feel like I wish it would have been me instead of them. I think for some of the research that I've read is you feel bad for the children.
Oh yeah.
So sometimes you're
yeah.
guilty because you feel like you're breaking up the family.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things
Definitely
that I would
felt that.
think of guilt. But it's not your fault. It's not something that you
wasn't.
could change. But in your mind, you want your family. You didn't get married to get a divorce. You really
No.
want your family, which ends up leading you to depression. Which
Oh God, yes.
some of you might be feeling if you've lost your husband, if he's your spouse. We're coming up on Valentine's Day. You feel alone. You feel like you want that companionship. You want the stuff you see on TV, the roses, the bears, the hotels, the Airbnbs where your mate goes all out with the. But you know what? Realistically, that doesn't always happen in a relationship either. So, and I think the good thing, not the good thing, but the plus of death is you can remember only the great things about your spouse. Whereas with a divorce, you have the loss and the betrayal. So if your spouse cheated on you, if he left, or if something happened where you don't have that with the death. So research kind of shows that a divorce is kind of in ways worse than your spouse dying. So not that either of them are great, but it's mentally harder for you when you're divorced because you keep going through things with the person and they're still living.
Yeah.
And I do know from experience with Ebony, once somebody's dead long enough, I say they become angelic. And what I mean by that is you only remember the great things. Whereas with a divorce, you're continually dealing with everything that you went through. You're still, it's
the good and the bad.
You get to the point, I think, where you have a good relationship, but I think that takes time.
Yeah.
So how did you handle your depression?
Well, I can't say that let me tell you, I think one of the key things in the area of divorce in the marriage is because it actually is a soul tie. Right. And so I think that's why that is so challenging and hard, because when you enter into the covenant of marriage, you become one flesh, you become one. And so it's like a part of you dying, right? Yeah. When you become one with a person, right? And you're tied to them, not only emotionally, physically, sexually, right? Because God intended marriage to be that, for us to become one flesh. And so when that person leaves, then you're no longer that one flesh anymore. And so you feel divided. You feel impartial. You don't feel whole anymore, right? Whereas when you were single, you were that. But when you connect with someone in marriage, you feel tied. And, soul ties are not just physical, even through marriage. There's emotional soul ties. There are physical soul ties. And that's spiritual. So that's what I meant when I was saying that there's some things I can look at from the natural perspective, and I can look at and say, yeah, I probably could have cooked breakfast at 5:00 in the morning on his way to work. When I was refusing, I could have been a better wife. I could have, right? There was some times where that guilt, like, oh, well, maybe if I would have did this in the marriage, did that in the marriage, right? So that's a good example where I would kind of go back into my mind, like, well, maybe if I did this or did that, maybe he would feel like I was a better wife. Right. But at the end of the day, it could have been that. It could have not been that. When you don't understand the true union of marriage, till death do you part, when you don't take or respect those vows as a whole, that no matter what, right? No matter what, that I ain't folding on you. I'm not going to turn my back on you. Whether we grow apart, we grow together, whether you lose a limb, whether you lose your mind, like whatever happens, that I'm riding this thing out with you at the end of the day, that I take my vows very much seriously. And so people don't do that. They don't enter in that way. And so as we were growing and changing and evolving, you get that person that wants to jump ship, right? That wants to jump ship. And so when that happened, I did experience that grief wheel that they talk about, right? And I don't remember the grief wheel today, but I do recall when I decided to go have therapy a year or two after my divorce. I was like, let me go. And my therapist gave me this grief wheel, and I went through it, and I was like, yeah, that's me. I remember that. I remember the anger. I remember this. this. I remember that. And so depression hit me very heavy. I was very much functional because I had a history of depression, right? And I learned how to live in survivor mode. So what happened was I immediately went back into survivor mode. Like, I don't have time to deal with this. I have 3 kids, right? A child in the marriage that are depending on me. I can't fold. Even though he folded on me, I can't fold on them. And so because I have things to do, right, I can't even be in this place of depression. So what I did was I was very much a functional depressive. And so what I did, I put on a smile and I'm like, yeah, it's finna be all right. It's finna be good. Sis finna get it out here in these streets. I was getting it before he came and I'm finna keep getting it. But I would literally come home, right? I would get through my day, go to work, cook dinner, and couldn't wait to run to the bedroom so that I could shut myself down and I could take that mask off, right? And I didn't have to smile and talk. And I went through that. Like people go through that, actually lose the person. But now guess what? I got a phone call. It's my dead ex-husband, right? Because he dead in my mind at the time. But I had a constant reminder when he would call me and chomp in my ear about our child or this or that. So I might be in a good state of being for the day, right? And be in my happiest place. And then boom, 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 I get a phone call. And now those emotions and everything that I was trying to mask and hide and soothe and feel, right, come rushing back in because now I have to deal with that emotional detachment because you still here. Like, you still here. You ain't going away. Like, you either need to stay, come back, or you need to go. And so there's this neutral space that you have to learn how to live in. Right. And that was hard to do, to transition out of being his wife and being his friend, because we were very close. We were like best friends. And so I lost my best friend. I lost my husband, my ex-husband now. But at the time I felt like I lost a lot. And so I'm trying to gain my footing in the world with who I used to be, but I'm not who I used to be anymore because this person has come into my life. We have now born children and all of this sort of thing. And so I have to find my new normal. And I believe that happens, right, for those that, whether they're alive or dead. In my case, he was still alive. Right. And so I had to relive that pain, that trauma, every time that phone rang, every time he showed up, every time he got to talking crazy in my ear. And I was betrayed in the relationship, right? I was betrayed. He literally left, married, and had a baby within the same year. Matter of fact, we were still married when he left to live with his mistress. And so I'm having to shuffle kids off to you on the weekend, and we're still married. We are still married because you've made a decision, a grown decision that you claim you were, I'm grown. I don't have to stay here. I don't have to be here because I'm grown. But yet there were so many wounds that never had a full opportunity to heal. So I was functioning, but I was very much depressed to the point to where I almost killed myself. I didn't do it, but there was a thought, right, which is demonic, right? So one night the enemy was like, you know what? Just, you tired of this? I'm tired of this. Just go kill yourself. Do it before the kids wake up. Yeah. So that night I'm in my bed and I'm like already plotting how, and I went into my bathroom. I took myself out the bed and everything, right? Which is a demonic voice, but because there was so much more in my future, but I couldn't see it at the time, right? I was depressed. I was a mess, in my head. And so I go into the bathroom and I'm looking for something to take because I was like, I gotta hurry up, because I kept hearing the devil tell me, like, do it before they wake up, as if that was gonna be any better for my kids to wake up and see me OD'd on the floor or something stupid. And I walked in the bathroom, I cut the light on, I'm looking for something, and because I'm a nurse, I know better. I said, whatever's in, I gotta take something for real, like something that's, because see, I'm so transparent and real, like I don't do attempts.
Can't take no Tylenol.
Right. Right, because I know what it's finna do and what it's not finna do. So in my mind, I'm in the bathroom.
Flush your stomach.
Right, I'm in the bathroom looking like, ain't none of this gonna work unless I shoot myself or drink some bleach, right? And I still might make it, right? So, outside of shooting myself. And so my ex-husband had taken the guns or anything out of the house because I was a hothead back then anyway. So it's probably good because I probably would have shot him or somebody else. I don't know. But to God be the glory. I remember crying in the bathroom because I was like, this is the stupidest decision. This is the stupidest thought I've ever had. And forget him. I got 3 kids depending on me. Why would I think that there's no more life outside of him, and I have 3 lives that are in another room that are counting on me. And so you hit survivor mode, kicks back in. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna have to just ride this thing out. I'm just gonna have to get through this. And I lived in a depressive state. Though it got better over time, I came in and out of it over time. And so it was not until I got fully delivered spiritually that I was able to get those depression demons and out and all that stuff.
How many years after you were married for 7 years, or approximately around 7 years? How long did it take for you to get to acceptance of the divorce, like you said, in a place where you got rid of all the spirits you're talking about, or you felt like you were okay as a single woman without your husband, without your ex-husband?
I would say several years.
2?
No, I think closer to 3. It was varying levels of being okay.
And I think, and when she says levels, I think you keep going through those stages we talked about. The denial, the fear, the anger, the depression, the bargaining, the guilt. You keep circling those stages just like you do in death. And I'm not saying if you lost your husband, it's the same as her losing her marriage.
Right.
However, if you can look at I'm comparing the grief stages are the same for a lot of things. For losing a job, for losing a spouse. It's not a comparison. What I'm trying to give you here is somebody that has continued to live. Tina has done very well. She's divorced. She's maintained her life. She's taken care of her children. She's had a son graduate high school, another daughter about to graduate high school. She's continued to live after her loss of her marriage. So that's the goal here, is for you to see somebody that continues after they go through something that, severe and that traumatic. Yeah. With that, so how did you get to the point? What are the steps? You went to counseling.
I did.
What else did you do?
But not right away. I went late. I went like 2 years later.
And again, it doesn't matter when you do it.
And it didn't help much.
What helped you the most?
It didn't help, honestly, for me.
Okay. Do you think it was because of your counselor? So it's not.
It was that.
It's not the counseling.
It wasn't a good fit.
You gotta have and that's another thing. If you're getting counseling, you need somebody that fits you. So counseling is good if you have the right counselor.
That's right.
So if you get a good counselor, go to good classes, go to somebody that's feeding what it is that you need, it can be very successful.
They're not all created the same.
Yeah.
I thought because she had the credentialing and this and that, and I wanted a Christian counselor. I'm not advising against one. I think depending on who you are, what your history and background is, and what you need, I think that is very much it's advantageous for those that are believers or followers of Christ to have a counselor that's Christian, that not only understands the natural understanding by with their education and knowledge, but that can partner with those of us that have that faith, that have that belief, that someone who's a non-believer might not understand when you come to your therapy session and you're like, I'm praying, I'm fasting, and this is the only thing that helps me. And they looking at you like, well, I got this 10-step plan over here. I don't know what you talking about, right? So you definitely need someone that aligns. That's a fit. That aligns with your mission and your goals. But that wasn't enough for me. Right? That wasn't enough for me. I needed that spiritual grounding. And I believe that the therapy would have been adjunctive, and it would have really added a lot of value to my entire process. I actually recommend it right now. And again, pre and post, as you're going through your journey and healing and being, delivered and really building and growing and kind of finding your identity, because you have to go through that process, right? And you got to peel back the layers of what got me here. How did this start? And find the root of a thing. And so I was dealing with a lot of things from the surface. I was dealing with the fruit of a lot of my decisions and trying to find the root. And so counseling supported that process, but it was not until I really laid at the feet of the Father where He actually took me to the root. And so I was getting help, right? But I kept meeting a brick wall with that help. And then when I finally surrendered to the process spiritually, then God started to show me stuff from childhood and all of these other things that I don't think anybody could have helped before me. Things that were even before me. So once I started to get to the root of a thing, then I can really get to the core, to the substance of why did I choose this? Why did I take this path? You know, and what's keeping me bound now? What's stopping me from moving forward? What's in my way right now? And so a lot of times it's self-sabotage. A lot of times it's, you know, insecurity, inferiority, anxiety, fear, right? Trauma.
And sometimes you're just mad.
Yeah,
God.
anger. Yeah, that too. You know, or wherever you are, you like you cycle through.
Right.
You cycle through.
You
have your good days and your bad days. But I think you need a good support system. I think you need, you know, that homegirl that's gonna tell you the truth and be like, you know what, I ain't trying to, you know, you've been on this train for a minute, but I'm gonna tell you who you are. You can't see who you are, but I'm getting ready to tell you who you are. But today we're not finna have a pity party. Today we're gonna do something positive. Today, you know, instead of talking about what went wrong, let's talk about the solution, right? You know, a lot of people come to me with problems and this and that, and they want to go on and on and on about the problem, what happened when it started, this and that. I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about the solution. At the end of the day, you're going to find much more value in your solution than you are replaying the problem. And so I think that's what we do. Not that death is a problem.
Well,
but
I think, go ahead.
Yeah,
I think you do. I'm going to say a lot to what she said. I do think counseling helps if you're at a stage. Sometimes when you first go through something so traumatic, you're just so angry. And you're so in a place that you feel like, can't nobody get me out of this. Can't nobody help me. Can't nobody do for me. So you do have to go through that anger and that. Sometimes you're mad at God because you feel like, why did he allow this to happen? However, if you keep, and it's good for somebody, it's okay for you to tell your story. It's okay for people to listen to your story. However, there comes a point where you have to start, maybe go revisit counseling again. Maybe get to a point, if you can, where you are trusting God again. You might have a moment where you feel like none of that is not any good. Like she said, initially, none of that helped. It didn't help me either. But I did go back. Me to get better. For me to live after my loss, I had to get real and true with myself.
That part.
So if you don't ever get to a point where you want to let it go, where you want to move on, you can be bitter for the rest of your life. You can be stagnant for the rest of your life. But at some point, you got to figure out if you're going to go back and pray, if you're going to go back to that counselor, if you're going to listen to your girlfriend that's so real with you, that tells you, girl, this is what you need to be doing. Now, we've been doing this for 4 years. When are we going to, it's not a rush. It's not a time frame. However, you have to decide when you want to do and be better. Pain is forever. Suffering is a choice. So we choose suffering. Pain is not going to go anywhere. And as Tina said, it's a new normal. You got to learn how to live your new life. But when you are tired of suffering, you need to revisit some of the things that we are talking about and that we are offering. Valentine's is coming up. That's my whole reason for wanting to do this. How do you feel about not having a significant other for Valentine's Day?
I feel great. I know it might sound weird, but
and how did you get to that? Because there's a lot of people that this is their first Valentine's Day. This is my 7th. It's her 7th. But again, time does change things. She's okay today. I'm sure the first one. The first one wasn't this one. So I want you to tell me, what do you tell our ladies that have lost their husbands? They don't have their loved one. You don't have the love of your life. How do you get to the point where you said, I'm okay?
I'll tell you how. I spent a lot of years pouring into everyone but myself. And that started very young. It started very young. And I had started having children young. My first child, I was like 20, 21. And so I had to provide and for someone else. Like I had to pour into someone else. And so I had gotten into this state where I would pour out everywhere but in myself. myself. So when I was not having this as that marriage anymore, because when you get married, you kind of put your spouse like, what are we eating for dinner, right? You might have wanted chicken, but because he said he want to stay, y'all eating steak. So you kind of lose some parts of what I really like, where I want to go, what I want to do. So I had to rediscover you, meaning me. I had to rediscover myself. And so that took time. As I began to rediscover myself, I started to then find new ways to love myself. And I started going out and dating myself. I started doing some more self-care things, right? I started, this is my favorite restaurant. My ex-husband would never go here. But guess what? I can do this now. I can do this. I don't have to wait on a decision or somebody else to okay me doing this or being separate from them for this amount of time. And so over the years, I was able to rediscover myself. And so now I'm very much comfortable with the position. Now I will also say that I have moments of frustration that have nothing to do with Valentine's Day, but because now there's a desire that's reignited, now that I've had a chance to be delivered and healed and in a good place, to share who I am now with the partner that God has for me. And so there are moments where I'm like, okay, God, how long your girl gotta wait? Because I didn't did the work, okay? I didn't did what so that way I don't bleed out on this next relationship, this next marriage. I've done all that I could do, not to make myself perfect, but I've done everything in the process. I've gone through grief and healing and therapy and praying and fasting and really working on my transformation, right? Because I wasn't bad before, but I'm even better now, right? So I have more to give in a relationship. I have more to share instead of it being about me. Instead of, if you don't serve me, then it got to go, and so I think we limit ourselves a lot when we get so self-serving and self-absorbed, and we don't learn how to balance that. And now I'm in a place to do it. So I want to share now. Now I want to share, and I'm just still waiting patiently.
So how do you feel? What do you have to say to women that feel like I'm doing everything right? I've done everything right. Where is my man? When is he gonna come? When are you gonna bless me with my person? So there's so many women out here, they feel like I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. I've done everything I'm supposed to do. It's just hard out here. So how do you get past that?
I'm really busy. Okay. I'm going to tell you what helps. And not that anybody should replace this, because busyness is not the answer. But because I have had this opportunity of time to build myself, I don't even have much time to think about those things often, because I'm building several businesses and things. And so busy but balanced, right? And that's really kind of the life that I'm living right now. And so I have those moments where I go to bed at night, or Valentine's comes up and I'm like, oh, it's just me, right? But I'm not like in a corner wanting to throw back a fifth or nothing, because I'm very happy. I'm more content now than I've ever been my entire life. I'm in such a good space. And so I understand my value now and how important it is to wait on the right mate. Not just time, not always been this long, or he look good, or he really has to meet match my fly, he really has to, and I have to match his, because it ain't just about me. Now I have to be that help me that I'm supposed to be to support his vision as well as mine. And so finding that balance with who that is to me now is worth the wait, because I did it wrong before. And now I'm willing to wait on however long it takes for that right fit, for that right match. So what I do, this is what helps me actually, is I think back to my life married, and I think back to my life now, which I'm very content and happy. Not that marriage makes you unhappy, right? Because there's good parts of it, there's bad parts. But I think about those things that I have now that I did not have married. And I say, you know what? I need to take advantage of this season for as long as I can. Though I am strongly desiring the man of God that is for my life, I have the advantage that some people don't have, that have never been married, and they're like, oh, I gotta get married, I gotta get married, I gotta get married. For me, I can look back into that time and like, I remember when I had to go to bed at a certain time because he was bedding and it was time for me to bed and for me to be where I needed to be to, make it do what it do, right? Where now I go to bed when I want to. Right? I get up when I want to. I don't have to get up and be like, oh, it's the let me fix him breakfast, this and that. Like, I can actually choose my own dinner menu for the night. And so though it might seem minute and small, these are things that I didn't have those privileges married. And I know that when he come, I'm going to have to exchange some of that. That self-serving life, that whole sharing and that whole thinking. And so I'm like, you know what? While I can still make these decisions, while I'm still in a place, sis finna go where she want to eat now. Not that I'm giving it up when I get married, because she ain't. She finna still do a lot of this that I wasn't doing before. And now I'm like, you know what? Let me be grateful for where I'm at. And for all of these things that I can do when I'm single, I know some of it I might have to give up.
What Tina just described is finding meaning in your singleness, which I have also been talking about a book I've been reading, which is the 6, stage of death, which is finding meaning. Once you accept something, you can find meaning in it. When you find meaning, that means you can look at the positive sides of it and not only the places where you have lost. With that being said, you have to learn. If you've lost your husband, if you are divorced, if you no longer have your companion, you have to learn to love yourself. Yes. Love yourself, and somebody else can love you.
Yes.
It's okay to be married, but you also have to know how to be single within your marriage. Have your own identity. As Tina described, have the things that you like. Have the things that you do for yourself. So many times we lose ourselves in relationships. So it's very healthy. If you have lost that person, take some time to get to know you. Take some time to get to love you.
Yes.
Because when it's time, if it's time, that person will come.
Yeah.
You won't even have to look for it. And sometimes when you're so self-absorbed into what you're doing, into you being great, that person just comes along and fits with, as Tina says, with your fly. With that being said, thank you guys for tuning in. I'm going to allow Tina has several things that she's doing. I'm going to put all of her information in the comments. So check her out. So please share with us everything that you have going on. And you know what? She has, if you need counseling, if you want a spiritual counselor, Tina offers services. She has classes. She has an academy. So I'm going to let you go forward with that. First of all, what are your handles?
So I'm on Instagram. I'm on all digital media streaming platforms. I have a podcast that I host, and it's called Flawed and Free. And it is on Apple, Google Play, Spotify, SoundCloud, Amazon, Pandora, iHeartRadio, and so many more. So there's no excuses that you cannot find me. It's Flawed and Free. I also have a website that has all of my contact information, and it explains the services that I provide there at theflawedandfree.com. That's THEFLAWED and free.com. And so I also have a spiritual warfare academy. So I specialize in helping women stuck in the middle mindsets of their mind. So those that are trying to be set free from the flaws of their past and to enter into their newfound spaces and freedom in their future. I help people move from the place in which they are now into the next. And so I meet the woman in the middle, the woman that's stuck. You're no longer where you used to be, but you're not yet where you want to be. And so I meet you in the middle, and I support your journey to freedom and getting to the promised land. And so a lot of my roles operate in the area as a spiritual midwife. I help people to birth those things that are put inside of them to birth into the earth. And I do a number of other prophetic online prayers, live webinars. I'm a live streamer. And so I'm on YouTube at Flawed and Free. I put a lot of content up on YouTube at Flawed and Free, so make sure you go subscribe to my YouTube channel. I put a lot of my spiritual warfare information there. So come join our freedom fighter community. There's a lot of women warriors in this program, in this community, have a virtual online academy. So many things happening in this ministry. I work in ministry full time now, and I love it. I have found my passion and my purpose. This ain't never. I love y'all, but I love it where I'm at here, and I love helping women in this place, right? I assist people from anxiety, grief, loss, death, so many things in this ministry. So to God be the glory. If you are led to follow, please like, subscribe my channel, and thank you, Elanda. Thank you for having me on.
One more question.
Yeah.
Why? I want her to give the explanation of why she chose that name for her business. And I'm going to tell you, I'm very selective in the people that I choose to interview. I want people to be transparent. My goal is to help others get past where they are. So that's why I chose Tina. We talked today about her divorce, but we've been through a lot of things together.
Yeah.
You know, we've lost a couple of jobs together. We've been laid off. You know, we've done a lot of things in the grief process. So that's what. Not only did we met at a hospital, we were both running programs, you know, so we've done a lot of things together. But I want her to tell you the reason why she chose the title of her business, and then we'll
close out. So Flawed and Free was born out of a dream that God had given me, that the path that I was taking within my field, that was not the call that he actually had on my life. And so once I discovered that God had more in another area, I began to seek him further. In seeking him, he actually gave me the name of the ministry. And I have a couple, but he gave me the name and told me he wanted me to podcast. I didn't even know what a podcast was. And so Flawed and Free is basically one of my tags, one of my slogans is free to be me, flawed and free. And it's a very authentic space, right? It's a very raw and real sort of space. And so though I am a woman of God and I'm very much on fire for God and love God, I'm your Holy Ghost filled homegirl all day long. So listen, I'm a pray and speak in tongues, and I might be stomping around, kicking the devil up and down the street, and I'm gonna sit up there at the same time and be like, but let me tell you something.
She's
right?
real.
Like, let me tell you what this is, and let me tell you what this ain't. And this is not what we finna do today. And so I think a lot of people that are drawn to this ministry maybe haven't seen many models like that. I've been called to pioneer some things in the earth in this season. And so I've actually had women come to me and said, it was your story, it was your testimony. You're so strong and you're so passionate and so real at the same time, and you're so down to earth, and this is what I love, because I don't feel like I have to hide behind my errors. I don't have to hide behind my past. And they come to me and they tell me some things, and they be like, listen, I couldn't tell my pastor about it. I couldn't tell because I was afraid to be judged, but I felt safe here. I felt safe with you, and I felt like you wouldn't judge me. And now they're in position for me to pour. Right? And I think sometimes we get so high and mighty and on these pedestals and on these titles and all these other things that we don't make ourselves accessible and available to people. Right. And so I make myself available to people because I have not always had that on my journey. And so I enjoy that. And that's where Flawed and Free came from. I wanted people to know that no matter what you've been through, no matter what they said about you, no matter what you feel about yourself today, that you're still free and free indeed.
Amen.
So that's
So
that's where Flawed and Free came from.
And I just want to tell Tina, thank you so much for coming on my channel.
Of course.
You guys,
I'll be back. I'm gonna tell y'all something. I'm gonna be back when my man come. When I get that 10-carat rock on my hand, I'll be like, y'all remember me? She back.
She'll probably be back when I start talking about you being laid off from jobs and grief and those types of things, because you do suffer those stages with so many other things. I want to tell you guys thank you for tuning in. I thank my friend here for being so transparent and true with me. And you guys have an awesome night.
God bless.
Bye.